Gold participants and listeners from around the world. I'm Kristen Schwartz, licensed midwife and MC for Gold Learning. And I'm here today with Cynthia Good, and we will be talking about her upcoming presentation for us here at Gold. Welcome, Cynthia.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here.
It's so wonderful to have you here. And tell our listeners where in the world you are located.
I am in the Pacific Northwest of the United States in a small suburb near the major metropolitan area of Seattle in Washington State.
Washington State, close to Seattle. So tell me, is this true what they say? Does it always rain in Seattle?
Well, it does rain a great deal, but at this very moment I'm looking outside at a beautiful blue sky and sunshine coming down, asking everything to bloom. So not quite always.
Not quite always. And so it sounds like we are in March now, so spring is around the corner there.
Yes, absolutely. We've got lots of things starting to bloom here.
That's wonderful. Well, we have asked you here today to talk about your upcoming presentation at the Gold Lactation Online Conference of 2019. And we're going to jump into that in just a little bit, but tell our listeners a little bit about your background and your professional journey as well here.
Sure. I come at all of my work through probably the first major lens that I developed, which was after having earned a master's of science in clinical psychology. That came before becoming an IBCLC. And between the master's of clinical psychology and IBCLC came mothering. And so mothering, my own experience of mothering and lactation was the inspiration for becoming an IBCLC, as it is for many of my colleagues. You learn, you go on that hard learning curve and
Yes.
experience whatever levels of challenges, and you realize that other people are having challenges, and it's a fascinating field and worthwhile to be in. So I bring both those lenses, both the clinical psychology side and the IBCLC side, to my work.
And I find that quite fascinating, to be honest with you, because that's an interesting combination. Tell me, did something surprise you when you put together those two backgrounds of yours, or was it like a puzzle that everything fit together quite made sense right away? Or was there something in your background from psychology that you applied when you in the field of lactation that you went, oh, wow, that's a surprise here?
Yeah, I don't think I find it as a surprise, because if you think about it, people are people before
Mm,
they experience lactation, right? So we
yeah.
bring our personalities, we bring our challenges, we bring our strengths.
Mm,
Every aspect of psychology you can imagine, human behavior or motivation or cognition, all of those are present in our experience of lactation, and they're also part of, as clinicians, as lactation supporters, how we engage with the families that we serve. And so I find them dovetailing just, over and over again. It's just an inherent combination. There really is a tremendous overlap between psychology and lactation.
hmm So tell me a little bit about it. It says here in your bio that your interest, a strong interest, of course, with your background in the field of lactation psychology. So what is lactation psychology exactly?
It's a term I coined in the
Mhm.
Journal of Human Lactation when I was trying to talk about this huge overlap. I kind of have in my head a Venn diagram, right? The overlapping circles where you've got psychology on one side and you've got lactation on the other, and that they have this huge overlap. And so when I talk about lactational psychology, it's really, a lot of my presentations fall in that category where I'm highlighting that overlap. I'm trying to help folks who are serving families look a little bit deeper into how
Mm.
the context of that family impacts their infant feeding choices, what opportunities are even possible for them, how counseling skills can be effective or not effective in different kinds of circumstances. And so, it's lactational psychology is just, where these two fields intersect.
hmm Sounds absolutely fascinating to me, and I hadn't really thought about this kind of as a field before, because when you're not in that expertise of if you don't have the expertise of psychology, you might not think of those two areas going together. But now, how you describe it makes perfect sense. You are right. We are first of all people, and
Yes.
bringing those two things together, I think you're able to serve the community a great deal with that, because with your expertise as a psychologist, I find that very fascinating. Thanks for sharing that. And also, I
I'm
know
sorry,
that,
I do have to
yeah,
interrupt.
please.
In the U.S. system, I cannot call myself a psychologist. That's reserved for
Oh,
folks with a PhD. So I want to make
okay,
sure my
sure.
credentials don't get
Well,
misrepresented.
absolutely. And thank you so much for pointing that out to me here. Thank you for making that
Sure.
clear. And you are also an expert in social justice, isn't that right? You facilitate trainings in cultural competency and humility. Tell us a little bit about that aspect of your work.
Sure. I would hesitate to call myself an expert because it's a journey that never ends.
Yeah.
There are so many different systems of privilege and oppression and so many layers of learning about each of them that we are truly never done. I simply try to, learn from folks who are further along this journey than me, and I try to share whatever I've stumbled along to figure out with other folks in the hope that it will make their journey a little bit easier. So it's very humbling, humbling work. I don't think any of us ever get to be an expert. We just kind of share what we know with each other, and hopefully everybody keeps nudging along on their own journeys.
Right. And it feels like we're always learning something new, and we're always kind of strive to improve upon the knowledge we have, right? And
Yes.
yeah, so
And there's so many cultures in the world,
yeah.
how could we ever be an expert on everything, right?
Yeah,
It's just the tremendous human diversity is
exactly.
beyond anyone's expertise. Yeah.
And I like how you coined it there, and how you saying it is not an expert and cultural competency. You also call it humility. I think that is very well said as well.
Mhm. Yes, that's a concept that I did not develop. It's one that I'm very much drawn to.
Mm,
It takes all the aspects of cultural competence, um, where we're focusing on skills and knowledge and motivation and how we apply that in our work, regarding the different cultural groups that we are working with in our communities. But it adds to that we have to look at how these cultures include systems of privilege and oppression, and
mm,
how that influences the context of everything, influences the interaction, who has power, who doesn't have power in that relationship. Even in a helping relationship, just by being the helper, we have power that our client does not have. And
right.
so cultural humility asks us to attend to these systems, attend to these power differentials in a humbled way, right? Because there's so much to learn, and none of us can ever be experts on all of this.
Yeah, in a humbled way. I really like how you said that. That really speaks to me too. So when I was looking you up a little bit on your website, I was blown away about your list of publications that you have listed there too. That was quite something. So tell us a little bit. You have a tremendous amount of publications and papers and published there. So tell us a little bit about some of the things that are standing out maybe.
Sure. Let's see. Probably my current, I don't know, favorite publication is the one that I wrote for the special issue in the Journal of Human Lactation that was focused on equity in the field of lactation. And basically, I had come across a lot of people who were basically saying we should not be talking about these challenging issues of race and racism and classism,
Hmm.
and by talking about them, we're creating divisions that wouldn't exist if we didn't speak. And I titled my article, Pandora's Box is Already Open.
Mm,
And it was basically trying to acknowledge that we're not creating divisions by speaking. Matter of fact, it's not even about divisions. It's
right,
about systems of privilege and oppression
right.
and how they impact, and the impact is measurable, how we have inequitable outcomes in the field of lactation, inequitable outcomes everywhere in
Mm,
societies that hold these kinds of systems, which is everywhere.
right.
And so I I had been invited to write that commentary, and again, just kind of stumbling along and sharing what I know. And interestingly, just to give you an example of the humility side, if I were to write that article today, I would make it far more gender inclusive.
Mm-hmm.
I would not have been only using the word breastfeeding. I would have been
Right.
using breastfeeding, chest feeding, lactation. So really the learning never
Yeah,
ends.
you're right. Yeah.
There's always improvement that we can make on our work.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for sharing that. And now let's talk about the topic you're presenting on here for the Gold Lactation online conference in 2019. And the title of your presentation is the IBCLC as Expert Witness, Role, Strategies, and Resources. Tell us a little bit about the topic and how did you come to pick this topic as for your presentation?
Sure. This is kind of an unusual topic for me because I don't have a clear overlap between the psychology and the lactation, for example. So many of my presentations sit in that overlap. This one is based on my own experience of having been contacted several times, someone asking me to be an expert witness, and at those times, I don't know, I had young children. I was heading out of the country to adopt my youngest. I was about to be back. There were so many things that I couldn't say yes. I couldn't say yes. And I also didn't really know much about how this worked. What little I could find were a couple of rather, dated articles in the field of lactation. There just really was not much available when I was first being asked. And of course, since then, Liz Brooks has an article, a book focused on law and ethics, right, legal and ethical issues for the IBCLC that does address being an expert witness more. But when I was approached, my most recent invitation, I found that information really still was not enough for me to try to make an informed decision or feel like I was, remotely knowing what I was doing in this new adventure. And so I had to really struggle to find information both to make an informed decision for myself where I felt like I knew what I was saying yes or no to, and then also the huge learning curve of being an expert witness when you've never done anything like that before. And so most of my presentations are somehow about something I've struggled with, right, in my personal life, in my professional life. And it's like, well, if I've struggled this much to figure something out, why not turn it into a presentation? And maybe there's something that will help somebody else who's struggling too. So, yeah, it's just kind of, these were things I wish I'd known, right, that maybe somebody else might wish they knew if they were getting that invitation and pondering, should I say yes, should I say no? And if I say yes, how on earth do I do this?
Right. Yeah, I think you brought up a very important point there. If you're invited or if somebody's invited to become an expert witness, how are they supposed to know, what is involved with that? Because as you mentioned, there's very little information out there to make an informed decision, to really be able to be of value, because it's obviously a huge commitment, and a lot depends on it because depending on what this being an expert witness for. So I think this is wonderful that you're giving this presentation. So anybody who is invited and considering to become an expert witness as an IBCLC might be able to have some good information and tools and resources around, so they know, okay, this is something I want to get into. This is something I feel comfortable accepting, and have the information available that, as you said, you didn't have at that time. So thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. It's like I said, it's a different kind of a topic for me, but it's interesting. I also found it really interesting to go try to make this a more global presentation. All of us speakers, we come from our own cultures, our own countries, and there's so many things we can assume is the same everywhere in the world, and of course, that's a false assumption.
Right.
So I was trying to find information, what can I find out? How does this work, in different countries? And of course, I'm limited by language, right? I couldn't find information in languages I don't speak, and but I at least did what I hope turns out to be a decent attempt to consider how this role happens around the world in a few different places that I had access to information.
Right.
Won't be just a completely U.S. biased presentation.
Mm-hmm. That's fantastic. And a question now, and I don't know exactly if you know the answer for that, but when you did your research or when you were asked to become a witness, does that happen a lot? Is there a need for IBCLC, or is there a high demand for for IBCLCs to be an expert witness, or do you see an increase over the years that you have been working on the topic? I, what is
Yeah, that's
your
a
what
great
are you seeing?
question. A great question, and I don't have the answer. For me, it's just been kind of sporadic requests. I don't discern any particular pattern. There are people I know who, try to advertise that they're available for this role.
Hmm.
It'd be interesting to know how someone who is actively seeking this role experiences, what's the frequency for them, right? Is it
Right.
steady? Is it just, random? Is it increasing? Certainly we have more awareness, at least in the United States, where I'm familiar with our overall, climate.
Right.
We
Right.
have more instances of people um, recognizing their legal rights regarding lactation.
Hmm.
And so as we have stronger legal support in terms of legislation for lactation, there's certainly the possibility that situations that couldn't have gone anywhere because there was no legal foundation for them, now they might go somewhere legally because there is legislation that says what is right and what is wrong, what should have
Right.
happened, what should not have happened from a legal standpoint.
Right.
But yeah, we don't have any kind of research that I'm aware of at all on frequency um, of serving as being requested to serve as an expert witness if you're an IBCLC.
Yeah, and it would be not really interesting to hear for some people, as you mentioned, there's people out there who are IBCLCs out there who advertise that expertise or becoming or being available as an expert witness. So, to our listeners out there, if you are ever been an expert witness in the pro or have considered it or even have extensive experience, please post in our Facebook discussion group. We have a lactation Facebook for gold lactation. We have a Facebook discussion group. Post in there and let us know. I think that would be something we would be interested in learning, right, Cynthia?
Absolutely. This is just one of those areas where it's a topic that is not well developed in the literature of our field. It's really the best information that I could find was in Liz Brooks' book, which I mentioned
Yeah.
earlier. But if you go into like the field of medicine or the field of nursing, then you can suddenly find many articles. It's just addressed so much more. So we're really kind of in the early stages of development of this as a topic area that folks could know something about
Right.
in the field of lactation.
Absolutely. Now, before I let you go, what is your hope that our listeners, when they attend the presentation, will take away with them?
I hope that people will walk away with a feeling like should they get an invitation to be an expert witness, that they will know enough about the role that they feel reasonably confident, given that it's an adventure and we're never fully confident when we
Hmm.
do something for the first time, but
Right.
reasonably confident that they're able to make an informed decision to say yes or no,
Hmm.
and that they have filed away some of these resources, the notes for this, so that they don't have to start from absolute zero. They know that there are resources out there, and they know how to start finding them.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thank you so much. I am looking forward to this presentation very much. Thank you, Cynthia, for sitting down here with me and chatting about your background and the presentation here and your good work out there in the world. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
The presentation, the IBCLC as expert witness, role, strategies, and resources is part of the Gold Lactation online conference. And this is to our listeners. This presentation will be live on I think it is April 15th. I hope I'm not mistaken. But you know where you find the exact information when it will be on your in your time zone? Go to goldlactation.com. There you will find the information on this presentation and on the other presentations in the conference as well, and when the event is live in your time zone. And of course, we have everything recorded as well. So if you cannot attend on the live day, we will have a recording for you of this presentation as well. So to our listeners, a big thank you for listening here and participating with me today. Have a wonderful day. Bye bye.